Hi, welcome to Jade Kind Gaming. My name is Adam, and today I am here with another actually building a world video. It's been a bit. Um, this is what, the fourth? Sorry, I got distracted building a world for a game that I ended up I was running before this, and another world for a game I'll run before I run this one, but probably may not get out to you for a while. It just, I got distracted from world building by doing some other world building. Very sorry. But I am back. The idea with this world that I'm building, that I'm sharing, is that I want to put a fair bit of work into it before I ever actually get into it, which I'm already doing, and I want to be able to use it time and again. So I was doing some quick and dirty world building to make worlds for games that I'll run, and I'll probably only run in that world maybe once, but still fun. Today, I have some new stuff to go over, the new ideas that I've thought of in the time since, the last video. An attempt at some new organization, though I'm not the happiest with it, so I'm just going to dive in with that. So I have now a document. It's just a Google Doc so that I can access it from any computer. And basically I took the information that I had in the first video, where it was just all my random thoughts and ideas, and I took the written documents that I had. I did the second one was talking to my players about it, and then in the third one I went over those ideas. All the ideas that I didn't throw out, I added them together, and I've kind of categorized them. So under gameplay, we have alternate rules, races, classes, character details, backgrounds, the heroic catalyst, rule idea, equipment, feats, spellcasting, magic items. Under creatures, we have monsters, animals, section for NPCs that has nothing in it. Under the world, we have material plane, basic stuff, and then, or uncategorized stuff, and then continent 1, 2, and 3. There's 2, there's 3. Stuff on deities, other planes, campaign ideas, and then I get, at the bottom, I just have new stuff. This is more organized than than just the first document that was just ideas in the order that I came up with them, and the second document, which was just the notes of my players' ideas in the order they came up with them. So more organized than either of those for sure. I'm still hoping to pull things together. I have done better, but usually I don't have this much stuff to organize, so that's kind of where my struggle is coming in. So for new stuff, my first reference here is C5E options document for subclasses and possible weapons. What does that mean? Well, that means that I want to see this document. This is a document that I have made. I made this one a while ago, a few years. And it sort of has stuff just sort of in set up. Like, I started with the idea of this Elementalist class. If you notice, there is no detail on it. So that's probably not the kind of thing I'm going to copy. I might, look at some of these ideas that we have on here. I think I had an idea to have a circus, so College of the Circus Bard might be good. I still love the idea of College of Worship for a bard. Basically going in the, we have like different religious versions of a bunch of classes. That's a perfect fit. Here's the big one that I know that I wanted to reference this for. One of my players had the idea of, I want like an ooze person race, and my comment was probably not, but I do have an option to get that kind of flavor, because I had already mostly, you can see at the bottom, it's got some rough notes. It's not finished, and it's definitely not tested. But I have a version to start out with a Sorcerer's Origin for Ooze Imbibed. And I'm like, yes, gotta carry that over. I have part of a Seeker of Immortality wizard. Maybe. Might consider that. And then under weapons, I took like the older SRD, like the 3rd edition one, and I had taken some of the weapons that were missing from 5e and done a quick breakdown of those, including some of the exotic racial weapons. I don't know. Not sure if I'm going to carry it over, but it was particularly that Ooze Imbibed is the main one that I'm like, gotta... That meets a goal that one of my players wanted. They wanted to be able to play Ooze-like creature. Ooze Imbibed Sorceress Origin will do that. So, I'll even add a note. At least Ooze Sorcerer. Now I have that. So I figured our first campaign, I think I went over this at some point. The idea being the first campaign, no, maybe this is me going over it. Oh wow, it's been a long time since I've updated this. Will take place about 500 to 1,000 years before the main war setting. This way, I don't have to worry about those political details from the start. You know, the continent one has that whole war going on between the people that, you know, high magic society and anti-magic. It's before all of that by, for many races, generations. And it will be on Continent 1, so I can focus on that continent's geography and studying from the start, and I can work things towards setting up for the war, for the future. Campaign will center around the founding mages of the Wizards College. The first wizards, being the idea that I can let my players be the first wizards, have named spells within the world that are their former characters' names. I guess I can just read the notes as I keep spinning off and then looking at the notes being like, that's what I'm about to say. So this gives players a chance to make an observable effect on the world's history. Also, there was the request for prolific dragons, is one of the things my players requested. I can use that goal early on in the campaign. Wizards working for like a king or something, trying to get land grant to build their college in an area that will be the site of the capital city in the future. The idea of this is eventually going to become the mage, based nation. Like this is where that starts. And are given a task of killing or chasing off a group of dragons that are causing terror in the area. If I can get them to chase at least one type of dragon into the future home of the anti-magic people, that might even be part of like a reason, given historic excuse for hating mages, and begin the foundation of them working with creatures. Because the idea is like the anti-magic people, they have some sort of creatures that they have. I mean, that's how they're combating the magic, is through creatures that do supernatural things, alternative to magic. Thinking the campaign move forward. So, here. 5th elderly mage lines up the next class. Okay, the idea is 4 mages, because I have 4 players. And I have like one older than them. Mentor starting, not going to last, but something where I have an NPC input to where this is going from. And then he lines up the next class for the group of 4 that he's been teaching shortly before he, kicks the bucket. And as the founding of the college takes more of their time, the players move on to playing the new younger mages. So each player could have like 2 characters in the campaign technically, and between all of them, all 8 magic schools can be covered. If I do this game, I don't have to focus on class stuff early, since they'll be playing wizards, so I don't have to worry about like that ooze and vibe sorcerer. I don't have to finish it up because they're not playing a sorcerer in the first game. They'll be playing wizards. And really, I need to focus on the heroic catalyst options because I want to introduce that with that game. Race options, so they can be whatever they want. Some idea for like the languages, at least for that main continent. Start getting that going. The allegiance system to replace alignment. The first continent details in a geographic sense, not in a political sense. So, because those are going to change. I also probably want to sort out some basic stuff for deities and the outer planes, as they might worship a deity, and at least for the hells, okay, Tieflings are a race. They might want to be one of those. So I have put a lot of thought, ultimately a while back for me now, but a lot of thought into what the first campaign will be, so that I have that list at the bottom there. The idea is come up with what part of the world do I need to work on first. I don't need to work on the second or third continent right now because the wizards aren't going to be there. I don't need to work on all the different class options because they're going to be playing wizards, and they're going to be playing wizards of the 8 classes, or the 8 subclasses that already exist, the 8 arcane traditions, whatever. So that helps me with focusing where my work should be put. I want to do all this stuff because it's fun and it's world building and it's neat. But I need to kind of focus on, okay, at some point I'm going to start running this game, and what do I need for that point? And here's a list of some stuff. Races. I asked my players, what races do you want in the game? They weren't as helpful as I was hoping. I think it was Bob who said, all of them. I want choice. I'm Bob. I'm not going to answer the question you meant. I'm going to be, yeah, you want all of them. Fine. The question I was trying to get across when I was asking that was, what races do I build to make sure that I have options? Because I don't know that I'll ever publish anything with this world. I don't. Statistically speaking, most likely I won't. I have built a great many worlds. 2 of them have had anything remotely published for them. One of them was a PDF-only document. With Planetary Fragments, I did actually get a physical book out for the first time. That was the coolest. That feels so cool. But I tend, myself, to do world building in the assumption that that might happen. That I might battle past my attention deficit, put enough work into it, make it good enough, and make something real that other people can get. And if I do that, I have to work within the open game license, which means that there are things that I can reference and there are things that I cannot reference. For example, all of those races in every book but the core book, I cannot reference. Any of the sub-races beyond, other than whichever one single one they chose for each of the races in the player's handbook, I cannot reference. Those cannot be there for a core component of my world. So being told all of them was annoying. However, it put forth a challenge that I think, in giving time to think about it, I'm pretty happy with what my brain managed to come up with there. So we're going to do all of them. And I'm still going to do it my way. I was looking for, like, what races do I build? Well, I'm still pulling that answer out of what he gave me. So we have our existing races from whatever, the core books. Player's Handbook. We got the dwarf, the elf, halflings, humans, definitely going to have humans. Dragonborn, which are poorly done in the Player's Handbook. They are the worst race. So I do intend, I think, in keeping those, of probably modifying them, Possibly just to the extent of a buff. Or maybe I'll give them like a sub-race option that gives like a small bonus and you get to choose one of a few bonus. I'm not really sure. But we'll just say... needs buff. Perhaps. And race with bonus. Maybe just make wizards. We'll get to that in a moment. Gnomes, of course. Yeah, gonna have gnomes and half-elves and half-orcs and tieflings. I wanted all those. So, got Aarakocra. Those are animal people. Want to ask more? Yeah. I have Aasimar. Aasimar I have access to through some of the older, like 3rd edition, or maybe it was just D20 Modern, but I have access to those. Now, I don't have access to their stats of them, but all that means is I have to build a new version of Aasimar. And as long as I have them culturally in the world, as far as I'm concerned, you can play whichever stat breakdown you want. I, in fact, like that. That's a great idea. That's fun. Say, I have this one race, but depending on what exact stats the player wants out of it, they have a couple options for what mechanics they get to fit within the same flavor of character. Ultimately, I need a bunch of different kinds of Aasimar anyways, because I will, I will probably run those the same as Tieflings. I have a Tiefling for every hell. I'll have an Aasimar for every heaven. Why not? Like bear, goblinoid. I mean, I have access to the different goblinoids from the monster manual, so I just have to give them a culture for, for what the race is. And the player, if players want to play from that culture, they can just go get it from the other books. Centaur. Come on, people. Right? Changeling. That's an unusual one. Furbolg. Little giant. They're big. They're nature giant. Right? So we have that. We have the... Genasi. Elemental people. Like Tieflings for the elemental planes. Have people native to each of the other planes. I have them for each of the hells, each of the heavens. Why not have them for elemental planes? Right? Gith. Probably spelled that wrong. There we go. I'm like, that looks wrong to me. So, psychic. I have a psychic race. Goblins are goblinoids. I'm at it. Hobgoblins are goblinoids. Goliath. Little giants. Those are stone little giants. We have nature little giants and stone little giants. Kalishtar from the Eberron setting. Those are... Sorry, rebooting the brain. Those are the dream-related people, so I'm just going to call them psychic as well. Kenku. Animal people. Kobold. I have kobolds. I need kobolds. So, just like goblins give culture. Leonin. Animal people, cat, lizard folk, animal people, wizard. I'll get to some of what these references are once we see the patterns repeating, because that's what I'm looking at here, is patterns. Loxodon, Animal people. Animal people. Orcs just gotta get culture. Satyrs are animal people. Oh. So... Changelings were the lycanthropes, so I just have to have lycanthropes in the world. Shifters are the ones that were weird. I always mix those up. Simic hybrid. Here was a point where I'm like, how? What is this? What kind of animal people? The Simic hybrids were from Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. And there were these like experiment-driven people that were created with a variety of different animalistic traits. That is an option to make a variety of different animal people. Again, Tabaxi, animal, bull, cat. Turtles are animal people. Tritons, purple. Vendelkin, also from Ravnica, psychic. Verdant are from Acquisitions Incorporated. A book I actually just recently picked up. I'd actually put that Ac Inc. Sci from just trying to look up what some other people had said about them online before I had access to their stats, because that was a book that I kind of skipped until I found it for cheap recently online as a bundle thing. So I was thinking make those second. But reading through the book, they're like a version of, I think, hobgoblins. So I could also make them hobgoblins that are weird. Either one of those, they could... with the patterns here, I will have a race of psychic people, to which any of these other races that I'm calling psychic could be essentially a different, reskinned to be a different stat system for the psychic race. They're, instead of just being subclasses, they're just alternate race options for those. So it could fit into either one of those. It could be a version of a hobgoblin, or it could be a, different stat option for the whatever the psychic race I build is. Warforged. Machine people, Unitide Pureblood. No people. Do I have a note? Yeah, I already have notes about the 3 new lineages, because all this stuff was written before the new Ravenloft book that I just finished. So, we now have a list here of some options. So, some that I can just be like, yeah, I'll just make different stats for these. I'll have a race of lichens. I mean, ultimately, I have been requested to do sort of that kind of race that actually turns into an animal. So a changeling could just be like a half version of that race. So and obviously that's the whole thing to work out, but there's an option for that. Little giants. I have 2 different little giants. All I have to do is come up with a race that's 1 or 2 other kinds of little giants, and it's a grouping of which these are just different versions of the little giants. Which is a silly name, but I'll come up with something better. Give me time. Concept first, name later. Unless you come up with it the other way, in which case switch it. I will have a race of psychic people. All these, like, it's not like the Gith have to look like Gith in order to use the Gith stats. Because Bob said he wanted all the races. Bob wanted all the races because Bob doesn't want his choices limited. Bob has a tendency to look at different stats. This is just saying within the cultures of the world, here are more stat options for individual cultures. So it still lets him choose from all the different things. I'm just basically saying a lot of these get reskinned to one group. Animal people comes up a lot. I mean, technically, Tritons could be animal people for fish. Animal people are made by Magic Society. Some have become own race that reproduces on its own now, most not. So cats and lizards, I may make their own race now. In that, I have a couple different kinds of cat, and if I count the dragons amongst the lizard folk, I have a couple different kinds of lizard. So maybe those are now elevated to the stat that they're considered their own unique race. But the idea is Magic Society tinkering with things, inspired by the Simic hybrid idea, that they just tinker with things until they've created either modifying the race of an individual or creating a new creature that grows into details not yet there, but the idea of having one catch-all that all these animal people can fall into. It makes it where I can have all the animal people where they are, and where in general most of them are near unique. Very, obviously they've redone this experiment a couple of times, but there's no real culture of their own. They are an entity that exists within an outside culture. Shifters. Shifters are changelings. Maybe own thing. Maybe fit into psychic. It's obviously a physical change, but I might be able to skin that concept to fit into psychic as well. Maybe. So, it's listed up all the races, and I've managed to put them into categories where I'll make a culture and sometimes a race. Like, I'll definitely have my own version or two of psychic people that you can choose. I'll probably have my own different version of machine people. Machine people might be the same as animal people. Here's an idea that literally came to me as I'm discussing this with you. Machine people made by Anti-Magic Society. Right? Maybe. It could be an interesting clash there. Because I know the Anti-Magic Society already is the ones that they're going to have the firearms and such. So that might be an interesting way to look at that, to play that. Just a thought. I might do my own couple other versions of... I might think of what are some animal people that we're missing. Bears. Make bear people as an alt. And an example when explaining race concept. So when I lay out the race in the book, and I'm like, here, any animal kind of person could be made by this. Here's an example. Bear people. Because why don't we have bear people? I can fix that. Anyways. So by breaking them into categories and making it where these can be alternate options to those categories, I've really simplified the process of what I need to work on to make the races. And some of these, probably machine and animal people, I really don't need to work on. They won't be an option in the early game. They don't yet exist. They're all made people. So those ones probably don't need to exist at the beginning. Really, Adam? On the subject of elves, because I mentioned the word elf up here, I guess. On the subject of elves, beyond the natural theming that I'm considering, like, I have my dwarfs be men of the earth. They're literally made of gems or metal or stone. So I'm considering some sort of natural theming for elves, but I'm not positive on that yet. But one thing that I have now decided, they are undying. Until an outside force acts upon them, they are not subject to the entropy that causes all other races to grow old and die naturally. If they are not killed, they can literally live forever. Their populations do not get out of control as they have an excessively low fertility rate, and most elves never have offspring. At least not with another elf. From that, when a baby elf is born, it's not considered the child of the elf that gave birth to it, but rather to the community as a whole. All other elves that live in the community are the parents to the newborn elf, and as such, all defend each other as family. The entire community is a family. They share the children, because most likely that's it. It's not uncommon for an elf child to have no other children to play with while they're young, though their imaginations are as active and fantastic as any other child's. An elf child likely grows up as the only child, not in a family, but in a whole community. Elven societies tend to have very few non-elves as permanent residents, just because of how alien the concept is in the way that they live, that their societies are interacting as a whole. However, it is not unusual for elves to live amongst outside societies for a portion of their lives, either out of a desire to experience something new or to partner with a human whom they are much more likely to produce offspring with, half-elves, and with whom they would have the opportunity to raise a family in a manner that other races would consider more traditional. The idea being that, and I've thought, I don't have it listed. I'm going to add it. Life in seasons. With new experiences, passions, partners, etc. In each passing year. Life year. Find better phrase. The idea being, in general, it doesn't always make sense why elves aren't just proficient in every skill. I'm an old elf. I've had plenty of time to just practice a lifetime for another race on each of these things. Why am I not great at all of them? The idea that basically that they go through life seasons where their mind is developing, becoming interested, honing skills, perfecting things, finding someone to spend that season or that part of their life with, where that might be their spring, summer, autumn, winter, like that would all be maybe in their spring they find the love of their life, and they unite with them, and they're with that partner throughout their summer, their autumn years, into their winters when they are the time of death, when they would split. Going into spring, new passions, finding new people or new hobbies. During the autumn years into the winter of their season of their life, they would have parts in their mind that would just fade out, much like might be happening. So the idea is maybe you have a wonderful weapon that you yourself created, and you know that. You remember that you created it. And it is a high quality artisan's weapon. It's greatly done. But you could not redo that. Not now. Maybe some point later in life, that's going to be your passion again, and you'll relearn those skills. Oh yes, I remember. But you've moved on from that season of your life, that period of life when that was your passion, and you've refocused on other things. So just to try and justify the way that their mind works to hold that, came up with this sort of seasons idea, which also leaves the idea that they might make that decision during one season. They're going to go out and live amongst the humans, spend a life with a human, which could also therefore mean to them their life years, I'll get a better phrase, would be essentially equivalent to about a human lifetime a lot of times, where they bond with this human and spend that entire human's life. And then in the winter season, they move on, where they are built to move on. They are built for little parts of their mind to fade away. Just like they lose some of those skills, they lose some of that connection that would be so painful to have. It's not that they forget that person or that they loved that person. Just it's not like they forgot that they made the sword or that they knew how to make the sword. It's just not so personally connected to their mind anymore. I haven't come up with the best way to describe it yet, I know. But that's kind of where I'm thinking as far as altering elf society to be an undying race. And I think it's interesting. So I am going to continue to go along that path. And then I have this little section at the bottom here that these are actually all really new notes. Which is what made me think, I really need to make that next video, is because I just got the new Ravenloft book. And having gotten into that book, I had some more ideas. There are 3 lineages in that book. They would require that the world have vampires. If I have vampires, then Dhampir work. I would need tricky fae. It's based on hags. I'll probably have hags. But really, any sort of tricky fae that, does the thing like, oh yes, I will bless you with a child, but you only get it for 18 years. Then it will be of mine. So which case the parents there's something like, okay, we got to prepare you. You're going to have to flee so that they can never find you. But that's not what's going to happen. The fae's not coming back to collect the child. It's just old enough that it starts warping into a fae itself. And of course, in order to do the last race, I will need the world to have death, which I plan on having. So that should be easy enough. Because if something dies, it can be brought back in. The undying races or lineages, basically any way that something was brought back. So those are some options. Those are easy to fit in. Didn't have to worry about it. I have an idea for a small village around a wicked-looking abandoned house. The house is a one-way portal to the underworld, the plane of the dead. And a haunted house, which supports the village around it on the underworld side, with ghosts of its victims as the residents. Thinking eerily no kids in the normal village. And the house feeds off the life force of captured children. Bodies kept in the walls, aging. But spirits don't. So the village of ghosts is all children. So if you get into the underworld side, it's all kids. And if the evil force that is this house is stopped, then those more recent victims at various ages can emerge. All with the mind of children. Because the child ghosts don't enter the village until their natural life would have ended. They would have died, finishing the house feeding off of them. Like, it just feeds off of them as their body ages, but their spirit doesn't until the ghost of a child leaves when the body would have died. And obviously all of those, the bodies have died, they don't get to come back. But more recent, being any, the one or two kids that just went missing that maybe get the adventure started, down to, children that went missing 20 years ago can emerge. Anyways, can think of some weird, eerie, folk horror based ideas for how things function in the village. The idea basically being like, you enter the house, you've entered the one-way portal. If you were to immediately turn around and leave again, you would find that you are in the underworld. But you don't quite realize it if you just enter the house. You enter the house and you start walking around, and you get far enough in that it kind of traps you in there, and fun haunted house stuff. Basically, the idea being like, how do I fit some of this into the world? This is kind of what going through my mind when I was reading through parts of that book. A noble's mansion on a mountain that's generations old. Mountain has fertile ground in strips leading out from two sides of the mansion, and stony, rocky ground everywhere else, because this home was built over a chasm, just like a split in the mountain, with many sub-basements and dungeons below, and the chasm was then filled with soil, brought in after the construction, sealing and hiding the true depth of the structure. In the generations since, the lower basements, secret entrances have been forgotten and lost, leaving laboratories of evil undisturbed below. Just like a cool idea to I want to be able to run dungeon delving adventures. My brain fights me on it because I have to have a reason of why is there a dungeon here. I would like to run those adventures. My players would like to play those adventures. If I got some ideas as I was going through, and I was like, that is a way that I could have an interesting dungeon that also would be a level might still be relatively large, but it would have a lot of sub-levels, so a lot of depth into it. In different ways that I could make a dungeon work, make it where it makes sense. And it could be a dungeon with a lot of undead and that kind of thing, which is why they're, still... One of the biggest things is, how do I make this dungeon that is so deep that no one has delved into it for ages, yet there's monsters in there that haven't just starved to death? How do I make an ecosystem within the dungeon that it manages to self-support? And there are a lot of ways to do it, but I don't want to necessarily do the same way each time, so I was kind of have my brain trying to think of different ways, and this is a new one. This is one I came up with reading through the Ravenloft book, so that'd be cool. And then I don't watch a lot of horror movies. I've seen the first 2 Saw films. I own more than that. That was kind of a fluke. It's actually a cool fluke. I watched the first Saw film. It was on TV or something, and I switch it on. I'm watching just the beginning of it. And my brother, and this is back when I was in high school, my brother walks through the room, You'll never guess who did it. Well, there's only 3 people in the room that I've been introduced to at this point, so I guess the one of those that is least likely. Enough so that it's an absurd thing to guess. And I had it. Which made it like, oh yeah, I'm good at this. So I got the second one. The second one was a little more disturbing. I have the third one as well. I've had it for 10 or 15 years and not watched it because, no thank you, that's disturbing. I watched a horror film called Drag Me to Hell and one called Slither. Both of those were mildly against my will. I didn't really have any interest in them. I saw them in theaters because I wanted to spend time with friends. Ages back, and that's what they wanted to do. I did not like either. One movie that I own, that I've watched multiple times, that has one of the best openings to a film that I could imagine, is Ghost Ship. I saw Ghost Ship on my 13th birthday. Ghost Ship was horror, creepy, scary, and engaging and cool. And it was an awesome movie. I've seen a couple other horror films that I don't remember the names of. I've seen one or two that are, seeming like a traditional haunted house kind of horror film. And so some of those would be cool too. But anyway, so I'm just thinking of the limited horror media that I know of. When I'm thinking of things, reading through this book of Ravenloft, of horror stories for D&D. And Ghost Ship comes to mind. I don't know if there's anything actually mentioned in the book about a haunted ship. But it comes to my mind because Ghost Ship is probably my favorite horror movie. So my thought is have 3 dreadnoughts. Seafaring vessels constructed of metal that have been made. 2 are still operational under the anti-magic nation's control. The 3rd has been missing for some time now. It is a ghost ship, another portal to the underworld. Haunted ship. That's as far as the details on that idea have gotten, but that's where my ideas have gone. I'm like, I want some sort of ghost ship, and I like that idea of tying it where it's not just this old pirate ship that's drifting around, but no, that it's like, a dreadnought. Like, it's like, it is a known entity. Like, there was another one of these ships. It must have sunk. And then you spot it. And maybe you're for that anti-magic country, and you're like, why? It's our missing ship. It's still afloat. You try and get it back. Or maybe you're on the other side, and you can't necessarily identify, but you know those metal ships, those are the enemy. Attack. Whichever side it may be on, it encourages engagement with this ship that is now far more than what it used to be. That's the end of those notes that I have on there. But yeah, so I am still thinking on world building. I want to come up with a better option for the actual layout, how to organize my notes. I'm trying to focus on some things that are probably relevant to the initial campaign, although almost certainly the haunted house options and the dreadnoughts are not. So, but the ideas are coming, and they're coming, and you just got to work on them. Anyways, I'm still working on world building. I will be back with more as more ideas come to me, and maybe I'll have another option to try for how to organize my notes. As it is, I've called this document that I just showed the master world building document. So I at least have somewhere I can just throw the notes as ideas come to me. And that's an important place to start. But yeah, like the video if you enjoy these. Comment, let me know, if you have ideas yourself, sure, share them. But also, like, if this is helpful, just this idea of going over my process and my ideas for building a world. While you are certainly free to steal and rip off any of the ideas for your own personal games, whatever, have fun, enjoy it, be inspired, but also I hope it inspires you with other ideas that I didn't even come up with that you could use. Let me know in the comments. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. It helps me so. Thank you for watching.